Guys,
Yeah.
are you to see the screen?
Yes.
So how we are going to do it today is, today I'm going to talk a lot. I am going to discuss about the basics of the data structures, what exactly a data structure is, and also about uh, what is algorithm, how we analyze the algorithm, what are the complexity, why exactly we call it as a running time complexity in this space complexity. Okay. So in the today's class, whenever you have a doubt, please raise the hand in the Zoom chat. It will help me to continue the discussion and also look at the doubts. Okay, you can also DM me your doubts in the chat. Okay, so that will also work fine. For questions, I'm going to give you the time whether you are able to get the particular concept or thing or not. Okay, and this is going to be an interactive session, so I'm going to ask you a little bit thoughts about what do you think about a particular terminology or particular word. Cool. So this is how we are going to do it today. So before starting on the complexity, I want to discuss about the few things like what is a data structure. Okay. So guys, what do you think? What is a data structure?
Organizing data so that we can operate them in the best way.
Okay. Anyone else?
Arranging data in certain structure depending on the scenario so that it will be accessed in optimal way.
It can be accessed in optimal way. Okay. Anyone else?
Organizing the data in structured format.
Okay.
Data structure is concept to store and retrieve the data in efficient way. Just
Oh, so data structure, all of you are correct. So data structure is nothing but a structuring of data or reorganizing of data. Okay, I will write it later. Reorganizing of data so that the common operations will be efficient. Okay, so the common operations like uh, searching anything inside the data or do a lookup inside the data, inserting the data, deleting the data. Okay, so this all are will be very efficient in a certain way. So very simple. Data structure is nothing but a concept where we structure or reorganize the data. Okay, and it really helps a lot. Okay, let's take an example how it helps. So let's take a scenario. For example, let's take a scenario or an example of pair of socks. Okay, so this is a particular example here. So suppose in our home we have a wardrobe. Okay, I'm going to talk about the two scenarios. In normally in our home we have a wardrobe where we put our clothes. Then we have drawers with among ourselves. So a particular drawer I am dedicated to the socks. Now there are two scenarios. After washing my socks, there are two scenarios in which I can put my socks into the drawer. In the first scenario, what I'm going to do is scenario one. I'm just randomly dump all my socks into the drawer. Okay. In second scenario, I will pair them up and put it into the drawer. Okay. So what happens is now I have to go to the office. While going to the office, I need to take a pair of the socks. Now the question is, what do you think that in which scenario taking out a pair of socks will be more efficient? Which
or
Scenario 2.
uh, less time will be taken? to get pair of socks. So which one is it? In this scenario 2. So is this clear? Is the scenario clear? You have the two scenarios. In the one scenario, you have just randomly dumped all of your socks into the drawer. In the second scenario, what you have done, you have paired them up and then you have put them into the drawer. Okay, the question is, now I have to go to the office and I have to take out a pair of socks. In which scenario will it take the less time to get the pair of socks?
Second.
Scenario 2.
So definitely in the second scenario, it is going to take the less time. Why it is going to take the less time in the second scenario? Because I just have to pick up a pair itself. While in the first scenario, I pick up a sock, and then I have to look for the another pair or another matching sock within the whole dump. Okay. So you can see that what we have done while by pairing we restructure or organize the socks before we start any operation on it. Okay, so this is what we mean by structuring of data. So here we have we done the organization of or we organize the socks earlier. Definitely organize will take a time. Okay, so putting random putting the socks randomly will take no time. You just dump it, but pair them up, put it in a nice fashion, that will take a one time effort. But the most common operation of selecting the socks or selecting the pair of socks will take less time in the second scenario. Okay, so the most common occurring operation we want to be make efficient. Okay, that is what. So this is one example. Second example is everybody uses a dictionary any point of time before the Android phones. The dictionary, physical copy I'm talking about, how it works, dictionary. In dictionary, what you do, suppose you have to search for a word in a dictionary, physical dictionary I'm talking about. What you do, you open the, suppose you have to search for tutor. You open the dictionary, you find the middle, and you see that the middle comes around K, all the words which is starting with K. You know that T is comes after K. So what you do, now you go in the second half of the dictionary. In the second half of the dictionary, you try to open it again and you will find out that, okay, it is something W, all the words are related to W. Then you go to the first half in that. So this is how what you are doing. You are trying to search a word as quickly as possible. And it is possible only because the dictionary is, all the words in the dictionary is put it in a alphabetically sorted order or in the alphabetical order. The same thing happens if what happens if in the dictionary all the words are put in the random order. What happens in that case? All the words are put it in the random order. Then what happens? Then uh, you have to go through each and every word and see whether that is your targeted word or not. Okay. So the another example of dictionary where we have pre-processed the data in the terms of putting all the words in the alphabetical order so that while searching for a word in it will take the list. Yeah. Any doubt or anything you want to add here? Anyone?
It's clear.
Sagar, Sarika, Shubham.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Anyone is having any doubt so far? Next thing is, let's move to the next thing. Next thing is type of data structure. Generally, okay, there are two type of data structure. One is we call as a linear data structure, and another one we call as a non-linear data structure. Can you give a thought of what could be a linear data structure and what could be a non-linear data structure?
Yes. Linear must be the sequence one, like the array.
Sequence of what kind?
um,
Memory
sequence of
wise.
memory. Yeah.
But okay. Anyone else?
Data restore in memory in sequence wise, like in next suppose to array of size of 2 we are taking. So first element restoring at suppose 0x12, second will restore 0x13, like sequence wise. In memory we can get data in sequence wise, like in if we go if we know data address of one element, we can get data for other using same address. We can increment and get other data also.
Okay. Anyone else? Any?
So, in linear data structure, memory has to be utilized in the linear form, sequence form, but in non-linear, focuses on organizing the memory, using the memory in optimized form.
Okay. Guys, anything what is coming to your mind, you can speak it out. Okay. There's nothing wrong or right here. Venkat, Somnath, Shubham, Lakshya, Mano.
Yeah, so I get an example like for linear DS, we can consider a train where each truck is connected to each other, and non-linear as a parking lane of cars.
Okay. Okay. Thing is, it's never about storing the data. Why it is not never about storing the data? Because you all have taken the example of array, but what about the linked list? Linked list is a linear data structure only, but in the memory it is never consecutive. When you say in the memory it is always in the linear form, it means that you will be assigning the you will be assigning in the linear format. Okay, so it's never ever about how you store the data. It's always about how you access the data. Okay, it's never about storing the data. It's always about how you are accessing the data. So everybody please focus here. When I say accessing the data, it means that suppose you are standing on a point A and you have to move forward. Then for moving forward, how many paths you will have, that will define whether it's a linear data structure or a non-linear data structure. If you talk in terms of array, okay, array is having a special case of direct addressing. But if I ask you to go from a point A to point B, then you have only a single direction to go. Single direction means suppose A of 4, if I ask you to go to from A of 4 to A of 5, you will have a single direction to go with. Okay, single path to reach there. Or A of 4 to A of 6, there is a single path to reach there. Similarly, in the linked list, okay, this is about the array. Similarly, in the linked list, if you are on a node, you can move to the another node, okay, by moving into a single direction. This direction is better to say as a decision point. What better to say as a decision point? Means if you are standing on a point, you have a single direction to take a decision on. Whereas in the nonlinear data structure, you will have multiple paths or multiple directions to work with. Okay. So if you are standing on A, you can go to B, you can go to C, or you can go to D. So it's always about accessing the data. So here you can see that you have multiple directions to work with or to choose from. So you have multiple directions in your decision points. Okay. So decision point means a point from where you want to move forward. Okay. So it's never about storing the data. It's always about accessing the data. So the example of linear data structures are array and linked list. For non-linear data structures, you have multiple examples like trees, graph, priority queue, or heap. Okay, these are the examples of the non-linear data structure. Okay, a bit controversy happens when we say the array is a. Based on this, we say that array is a linear data structure, but you can go from A1 first data or A of 1 to A of 2 or 3, but you can go into still from a single point you can go to a single other cell only within the array. Okay, you have a single direction to move. You don't have multiple directions like you have in trees and graphs. Okay, so that's how we differentiate between a linear data structure and a non-linear data structure based on how you access the data. Another thing, another thing is, suppose you want to do a search. Search is a basic operation in which you try to look up for a targeted data into the data store. Okay, means where you have stored the complete data, you want to do a search for a particular data. So what happens in the array? You have to go to each and every element to look for that particular targeted data. Okay. So how you move in that condition in the array? Linearly. Okay, from here, then here, then here, and then here. Similarly, how you move in the linked list? From one node to another node, the one node to the another node, one node to the another. But if you talk about in terms of tree give you a functionality where you have the multiple decision point. Okay, I'm talking about generic tree. From a point to go either on the left side or the right side, either on the left side or the right side to search for a node. Okay, that's how you define a linear and the non-linear. Okay. Doubts? Ankit?
Yeah, Nishant just wanted to come back to a point whether we say that arrays are linear or a linear data structure.
Yes.
I believe. Can you make that statement again, because you said that there is a bit of controversy around
Yes.
that.
So, bit of controversy in terms of understanding, because what happens is people say that, okay, you are saying that means you are making a statement that whenever you access the data, the way you access the data, that makes a differentiation between the linear and the non-linear data structure. What happens is array allows you the direct addressing. Means when you write A of 4, you can directly jump to the fourth element. Okay. Or from A of 4, you can make a jump to 5, A of 5, A of 6, or A of 7. Okay. So how it could become a linear data structure? The point comes for access is like for all the operations we are talking about, like the search. If you have to do a search, so the decision points, you have a single decision point in the array. Means if you are standing here, from here you can make a jump to the next element, then to the next element, then to the next element, like this. Okay, when you want to search for it. Similarly in the array. So you can move from one decision point to another decision point. Means you have a single direction to go with. But if you look at the tree, if you are here, you have the left side, you have the right side. Means you can choose anything. You have two directions to work with. Okay, so you can say that you have multiple directions in a decision point to go forward. So that's how you define a linear and a non-linear data structure.
So Nishant, on top of this explanation, can this statement be right? If a data structure has a connected traverse path into only one direction, then it is termed as a linear data structure. Can we
You
make
can.
that statement?
Yeah, you can make that statement. Hope I answer your question.
Yes. Thanks, Nishant.
Anyone else?
Nishant, how about a double linked list? Double linked list have 2 pointers, forward direction and backward direction.
So doubly linked list again is like either, okay, that will help you in the doubly linked list when you move either in the forward direction only, or either you will move in the backward direction only. You can't say that you can choose between them. Okay, for searching an element, if I ask you to search for an element, you will be moving forward only, or you will be moving backward only. Okay. It gives you the capability of moving backward and forward in both the direction, but generally for any operation you do, you follow a single path only. You don't choose between the two paths. That's why the doubly linked list is a linear only. Okay. Satya, Savita, Sagar, Somnath, Nidhi, Lakshya. Any doubt so far?
No.
No.
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. So let's move to the next part. Let's talk about what an algorithm is. Okay. So can you guys help me to define what an algorithm? What is an algorithm? I hope everybody heard this name.
Steps to do a certain work,
Okay.
steps to perform a job, basically.
Okay. Venkat.
So finding the optimized solution to a problem.
Okay. Anyone else?
Steps of instruction required to accomplish the task.
Okay, accomplish the task. Anyone else? Savita? Ritika?
Method, a particular method for dealing with the data, a structure, dealing with the type of data.
Method. Okay. Guys, okay. So let me define the algorithm. Algorithm is a simple, a step-by-step instructions written to achieve a goal or to solve a problem. Achieve a goal or to solve a problem. Both are the same thing. Okay. So what an algorithm is? Algorithm is nothing but a step-by-step instruction to solve a end goal. It doesn't need to be optimized. It's like a just the instruction which a person can follow. Okay. Now let's take an example. Let's take an example of how to make a tea. It could be a problem. Okay. Let's take an example of how to make a tea. Sorry for bad handwriting. I have a very bad handwriting. So how to make a tea? I can define this algorithm in a way that, listen to me very carefully. I can define the algorithm for this problem in a manner that take a Bisleri or take a prestige pen, put Bisleri water in it, put Nandani milk in it, then put Tata tea powder, put some Reliance sugar, put it on a prestige stove, use Indian gas flame, then boil it, then filter it, and then serve it in a lao pala. This is an algorithm to make a tea. Okay. Again, I am defining the algorithm. Take a prestige pan, put Bisleri water, put Nandini milk, put Tata tea, put Reliance sugar, boil it to a certain temperature on the Indian gas flame over the prestige stove, filter in a lava cup and serve it. This algorithm is definitely going to make a tea. There is no issue with the algorithm. Means there is no place where this algorithm can will not make a tea. It is going to make a tea. But what is the problem with this algorithm?
Very specific.
Tightly coupled with brand.
Amar?
And what if one of the ingredients is missing?
Okay. Let me ask people. Amar, what do you think?
Specific to certain brands only. We cannot, change to other brands.
Okay. Venkat, what do you think? What is the issue with this algorithm?
I think we can separate something like boiling water and pan, and is common for other scenarios like preparing tea also. So I feel it is fine.
Okay. So that's fine because we are looking for this now. That is completely fine. Anybody else? What do you feel?
For making a tea, the steps are correct, but it is too specific. So it should be generic, means it should be applicable to all for making a simple tea.
Okay, yeah, that's correct. Actually, The algorithm which I just told is very, very specific in nature. Okay. Why it is specific? Because I have mentioned the brand names. So suppose if you don't have Tata tea, if you are red label tea powder, then it is not going to work because you have mentioned that you need a Tata tea powder. Okay. So the algorithm needs to be very, very generic in nature. Means the same algorithm can be defined in a way that take a pan, take some water, take some milk, take put tea powder, put some sugar, boil it on a gas flame, and filter it and serve it in a cup. This is very generic. And once it is generic, you can use any type of the brand in it. Okay. So that's the same thing happens when when we are solving the problems in the data structures. In the data structures, when we have a solution, for that solution, the algorithm need to be written. The algorithm need to be so generic in nature that it could be written with the help of any language, whether it's a C, C++, C Sharp, Python, JavaScript, anything. It could be written. It should not be specific in any way. Means it should not use the capability of the language. Okay. What happens is when it uses the capability of the language, it will break easily because if you change the language, it will break easily. And this is actually what happening is the banking domain is moving from your mainframe technology to the Java technology because of the security purpose. Now, if suppose some algorithm is written in mainframe, some algorithm is implemented by using the capability of mainframe, then converting the same algorithm to the Java will be very, very difficult. Okay. But if you think that our algorithm is defined in a very generic nature and then it is implemented in mainframe, then the same algorithm is very easy to be implemented with the Java. Okay. That's why we want the algorithm in the data structure to be so generic in nature so that it could be implemented with the help of any language. Good. Is it clear?
Um, yeah, I have one doubt.
Yes.
Uh, so algorithm are specific to data structure,
No.
does it?
Algorithms are, as I defined, for any problem, it is a step instruction to solve it. Okay. So for data structure problems I'm talking about, we are going to have a solution. For that solution, we are going to write an algorithm. For that algorithm, we want it to be more generic in nature as compared to be specific. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Is it clear now?
Yeah, it is clear. But like in some of the issues, we often observe that an question, let's say an algorithm is written, which we are solving using an array, and can that be actually be diversified? Like an algorithm can be adopted with any data structure, like it is
No.
always proportional to any data structure, or sometimes it has
You are
constraint.
changing the algorithm. See, when you are saying that you are changing the data structure, means you are changing the algorithm. Okay, so that is not correct. It will be more clear when we progress in our discussion. Okay, just
Okay.
be with me and keep your doubt with you. And in the end, if it is not resolved, I will be more elaborative about it. Any other person is having any doubt? So, Shubham, Somnath, Sarika, Sagar, Nidhi.
Means when we are writing the algorithm, it is we should avoid using the built-in functionality of a language. So
Yes,
then only it will be a generic one.
yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay.
Let's take the another example. Suppose a person wants to go from city A to city B. Person wants to go from city A to city B. Now there are three modes of transport available. One is bus, second is your train, third is your flight. Okay. So going by bus is an algorithm by itself. Okay, going by bus, it's an algorithm by itself. Let's say A1. Going by train is an algorithm by itself. Going by flight is an algorithm by itself. Can you tell me which of them is the best one? So suppose a
Uh,
person wants to go from a point A or city A to city B. There are three modes of transport: bus, train, and flight. So going by bus is an algorithm by itself. Going by train is an algorithm by itself. Going by flight is an algorithm by itself. So can you guys tell me which of the algorithm is the best one?
All are best and all are worst because it is not specific to a time. Means whether we require the time or space, means that should be.
Well, requirements is not there, like how the person is, what requirements of the person is there. So depends on the requirement of that person.
No, so simply a person wants to go from A to B. This is a requirement. There is no nothing else.
If we
Yeah, based on the
consider time, then
constraints. Yeah, based on the constraints like money and time. If it has a time but don't have money, he can go by bus or train. If he don't have time but he has money, he can go by flight in a short time.
Okay. Yeah, Lakshya, you are saying something. It got interrupted in between.
yeah, same thing, Nishan.
Sagar, what do you think? Okay. Nidhi, Savita, Satya, what do you guys think?
Yeah, the same, Nishant. It depends on the scenario.
Yeah, it depends on the scenario because you don't know what are the judging parameters. What are the parameters on which you are trying to judge which algorithm is the better one? Okay, so you don't know the context. When we say which is the best algorithm to achieve the end goal, you don't know which one is the best one. It could be A1, it could be A2, it could be A3 based on the context. So if I say the cost is the context or cost is the parameter, then definitely the train or bus, whoever is the cheaper, will be the best algorithm to achieve the end goal. But similarly, if I change from cost to time, then flight is definitely will be the best algorithm to go from the A to B. Okay, so we need the parameter to judge the algorithms. So what happens in the data structure is, in data structure for any problem, there are going to be multiple solutions. For multiple solutions, there are going to be multiple algorithms. Among the multiple algorithms, you have to choose between which one is the best one. So for choosing the which one is the best one, we need to define the parameters. So the judge parameters which we have right now.
Fatigue can also be a parameter, right?
Sorry,
Fatigue can also be a parameter.
can you be more elaborated?
Tiredness,
Sorry.
fatigue.
Huh. Anything could be a context. Okay. Now I am coming into the part of data structures now. So what happens in the data structures, as I told, there could be multiple solutions, and for all the solutions, there could be multiple algorithms written for that. So among the algorithms, we have to judge which one are the better one. So to judge the algorithms, we need to define the parameters. So we are going to define the parameters which are going to help us to check which of the algorithms are better, which of the algorithms are not. So in the computer science world, what happens is we bother about two things very much. One is the storage, means where your data is going to store. Second is the processing power. Okay, so the processing power is the another thing which we must bother about. And among these two, the processing power is the one which is very costly. Okay, now what happens is we want our parameter to be also as generic as possible. Okay, we want our parameter to be as generic as possible. To understand this point, I'm going to make an statement. So when you store the data storage is kind of a same standard among all the things. Means you are going to have the same SSD or the RAM, it is going to be standard. But when we talk about the another part which we call as running, okay, what do you think what it could be? Is it the execution time of a program? Do you think is it an execution time? No, this is not the execution time. The processing power or the processing time is not the execution time. Execution time is different for Intel based processor. Execution time is different for AMD based processor or your Apple processor. Okay, I forget the name of the processor. So the execution time cannot be because the same program can run can have the different execution time for the Intel, AMD, and the Apple. So again, what we will do is for the running time, to define the running time, we take a thing which is again a standard, which is called as CPU cycles. I'm bit going into the operating system. What are the CPU cycles is your code is converted into the assembly language. Whatever the language you are using is always converted into the assembly language. In the assembly language, we have the instructions written in a very basic format. Okay, instructions written like save, add, or something. Every instruction is divided into certain cycles. There are generally 6 cycles. When we say 6 cycles, it is like fetch, decode, execute, save, or something. I forget the other two. There are 6 cycles generally. These are called as the CPU cycles. And these are the very basic granular thing which happens with any instruction which is written in the assembly language, which is eventually converted from your code written. So these CPU cycles are a standard among all the processors, whether it's an Intel, whether it's a AMD, whether it's a Apple, whatever it is, the CPU cycle are always going to be same. Okay. So to make the parameter more generic in nature, what we do, we use the CPU cycles as a judgment. But to calculate the CPU cycles are not very much straightforward. That's why you have seen while solving the problems on the lit code or anywhere, what they do when you submit your solution, they show you the execution time. Okay. So when they show you the execution time is, they tell you that your execution time is, let's say 2 millisecond based on a certain processor. Okay. Based on certain processor and checked against all the submitted solutions. Okay. So that is not correct actually. So they have defined because they are using the same processor for all the solutions. So they can make a judgment. But generally, the parameters like the space complexity is called as is about the storage, and the running time complexity is about your CPU cycle rather than being the execution time. Okay. Doubts? Take your time. You can ask me doubt. I will talk within next 2-3 minutes.
For CPU cycle, it should be the execution time, but the execution time will be different for, I mean, it should be hardware independent, no? But as you said that it is.
CPU cycles are hardware independent. There is no connection between the execution time and the CPU cycle.
Okay, so means how how the program or the solution is getting elaborated based on the CPU cycle, means if it is a hardware independent.
Okay, so what happens is when we calculate any running time, generally what we do, we define the running time complexity based on the inputs. Okay, that will be more clear when I will come to the next part. Okay, that is the thing. The execution time is always will be in milliseconds. Okay, nanoseconds or something. CPU cycles are not like that. There are the total cycles, how much it is, like 100 units or 1000 units, like that. It is like that.
So the algorithm is judged based on the space and the time complexity. The space is very much clear, means it's about the storage, but it is not clearing about how the time is defined, means how the time is getting calculated on a particular.
Calculated in terms of CPU cycle means, for example, you have a program P1, it takes 100 units. When you say units, it's like 100 CPU cycles, like that.
Okay.
You can't say that it takes 100 milliseconds. You can, but it will be more specific because you have to specify the processor on you are saying that it is taking the 100 milliseconds.
Okay, so 100 unit. The unit is this unit is constant, means it will be applicable to every system.
Yes, that's what. The CPU cycles are remain same for all the kind of the processors. Means if 100 units are taken on the Intel, the 100 units is going to be on AMD and 100 units is going to be on the Apple. Right.
Can we just define, Nishan, what is a unit then?
Unit is the CPU cycle. Na? CPU cycle is a unit. There are
Okay.
6 CPU cycles. So that's why I told you, 100 CPU cycles. So single instruction, there could be multiple CPU cycles as using. So I will be more vague. So suppose you have the assembly language instruction 1, instruction 2, instruction 3, like that. This is taking, let's say, 4 cycles. This is taking like 6 cycles. This is taking 2 cycles based on the instruction. So total, how many cycles it is taking? 12 cycles. So you can say that executing this program is taking 12 seconds.
Okay. And means one cycle is the complete cycle, means from fetch, decode, execute, and save. So this is the only one cycle.
This is one cycle. This is second.
Okay.
Okay. Now
Yeah.
the thing is, we don't have to worry about this part, because when we are going, this is to generally explain why the running time is not, because if you see the references, anything except the Corman, the Corman is the introduction to the algorithm, the Corman book. You will see that people are saying that the running time complexity is actually the execution time. That is not correct. Okay, running time is actually based on the CPU cycle. Okay. Now I want to discuss one thing before going ahead. Guys, any doubt here? Anyone? Guys, you can raise your hand also. You can DM me also. It's completely fine.
Yeah, hi Nishant, I have one question.
Yes.
Yeah, actually you told for instruction we have different cycles, right? Like if I have instruction 1, this all the CPU cycles no need to execute, right? Like fetch, decode, execute and save. Only if to complete instruction 1, only fetch or fetch and execute completed, then we can consider it as 2 cycles, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have found out. So in runtime and execution time, theoretically I know, but in the practical programming world, I want to know like how this running time and execution time is different.
So, wait for some time. It will be more clear at the end of the discussion.
Okay.
I have a scenario to discuss.
Mar, just a minute. Ritika, you
Yeah.
had.
Yeah, my question is that execution time is based on based on the core processor, the type of brand it is. So whenever we run a code in our like whenever we make a code and run that code, so what is that? And we take that start time and end time. So what we are actually calculating? Are we calculating the execution time based on the laptop we are using, the processor we have, or the CPU?
Theoretically, it should be CPU cycle. If some platform giving you the time in the millisecond, then that is they are calculating based on the execution time. But the more appropriate and the correct answer, it should be the CPU cycle. If somebody asks you the running time, what is the running time? It should be the CPU cycle to execute all the instruction in the assembly language. Okay. But as I told, some platforms like the LitCode and all, they will give you in the execution time, and they will give the run time as the execution time. Okay, that's it. Somebody,
Okay.
you are asking something. Ritika, you have a doubt?
No, I'm done.
I want to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm having a scenario. Suppose a person is having a very slow algorithm, but he's running on a very fast machine. Let's say like he's having a machine of like 16 GB RAM or something, but his algorithm is very slow. And on the other hand, if a person is having a very fast algorithm and running on a very slow CPU, like having a 2 GB RAM, then in that scenario, what do you think would be, the execution time?
First of all, when we are going to define the parameters for the algorithm, it is irrespective of the machine. First of all, as I told you. Okay. When you say it's a slow algorithm, how you define a slow algorithm? How you say that it's a slow algorithm? We can't define that. First of all, it's a slow algorithm or the fast algorithm yet. we can say that algorithm is slow or fast based on this parameters. We still don't know how to calculate this parameter. The next part which I'm going to discuss is how to calculate this parameters. Okay. This is just the name of the parameter I have given, that based on the storage and based on the CPU cycle, we will say the running time and the space are the complexities which we are going to do. Okay. So the thing is, you can't say that. You can't define that this is a slow algorithm or this is a fast algorithm. When you say an algorithm is slow, how you will, irrespective of what you are saying that the algorithm is slow. For example, if I tell that, okay, I have an algorithm A, it is taking 100 milliseconds. Let's take milliseconds only. Can you tell me this is a slow algorithm or a fast algorithm? Just by
Fast.
looking at this. How? Because you are saying that it is 100 milliseconds. That's why.
Yes.
No, that is wrong. You can't say. You need a relativeness. Everything you need a relativeness. For example, very basic thing. When you say a distance covered, from where you make a relative distance? From the starting point. Let's say 0. And then you say I have reached 10. Always you need a relativeness to measure or tell that whether it's a good or bad. Okay. So don't go in deep right now. Don't let's be on the path. Okay. And try to see whether after 15 minutes you guys have the same doubts or not. Good. Just be
Yeah.
with me for 15 minutes more. Now we have defined the parameters that the storage and the CPU or the space and the running complexity are the parameter on which we are going to judge the algorithm. Now I want to talk about something other thing important. What the other thing is another thing is, in the data structure, what is a variable on which we are depends on? What is a variable?
To store the value. It's a storage unit.
Variable is nothing but a name given to a memory where you store any value. Means variable can hold any value which you can give into it. So can anybody tell me, irrespective of the problems in the data structure, what is the variable which we deal with? With respect to data structure problems, what is the variable which we deal with? No, the input is the variable which we deal with. Input which you provide to any problem in the data structure, or input is the size of the data you work with. Data you deal with. Okay, it could be 10, it could be 100, it could be 10,000, it could be 10 million, it could be very big. Am I correct? So in the data structure, the input size, we call the size of the data which you are dealing with is called as input size, or yeah, input size is the correct word. So it could be anything, 10, 100, 10K, 10 million. Do you agree with me? So this input size is the variable in data structure. Is it clear? Satya, Savita?
Yes.
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 Okay. Guys, one thing. Whenever you have a doubt, please raise the hand. Okay. If you don't have any doubt, don't raise the hand. It will confuse me whether you have a doubt or not. If it is clear to you, you can have a thumbs up. Okay. Whenever things are clear to you, you can have a thumbs up. If you have a doubt, you can raise the hand. Now, in the data structure, we call the input size as a variable because we don't know how big the data can be. Let's talk about this a little bit before going. The data which we are dealing with nowadays are growing in an exponential manner. So suppose you develop a website which is currently handling the data for 100 users. After 6 months or a year, that 100 users will become 10,000. Then it becomes 1 million. So it is growing exponentially. So what we want our algorithm to be work with any input size. Okay, it should not be big. There is a practical example for this scenario that why it should not break is YouTube channel. Everybody know what a YouTube is. It's a video streaming platform where anybody can upload their video. When the people upload their video, whenever you view the video, there is a view count. How many people view that video? Okay, so there is a counter running. What happens is 10, 12 years back, a very famous Korean pop video comes out, Gangnam Style. The people watch the Gangnam Style video so many times that the view count starts showing in the negative. What happens? The algorithm break. The algorithm to view the counts got break. They expected that the data can be 10 million or 1 crore. The view count can be reached to 10 million or 1 crore. But what happens? It go beyond that. Okay. So that's the thing they made the mistake. They made their algorithm specific by expecting the size of the data. Specific by expecting the size of the data, that this is the size it can work with. Okay. And because of such scenarios, to avoid such scenarios or to make our algorithm generic, we keep in mind that the input size can go till infinity. Since we cannot define infinity, we use the word unknown. It could be unknown. That's why to keep the algorithm generic, we assume that the input size can go till unknown. That's why everything we write as n. You have seen now every input size as n, or every complexity is written as order of n, big of n, n square, n log n. What that n is nothing but the input size. We never ever define the input size. We always keep it as unknown or infinity. Okay, so that at any point of time our algorithm could not break. So this n or this input size is variable, and we based on this variable we define all the parameters like space complexity and the running complexity. Okay, so now since we wanted the algorithm to be generic, the input size is considered to be unknown or n. Okay, since we cannot define infinity is something we should. So that's why this input size is the variable here. Okay, all the other things, whether it's 10, 100, everything, we assume it to be constant. For us, everything is equals to 1 only. Whether it's 10, 100, 10 million, whatever value you can write on paper is going to be constant for us. Cool. So that's why we keep the input size as a variable, as an unknown. We can't define it, so that our algorithm cannot break at any point of time. Cool. Are we good so far?
Is it really possible? I mean, in reality?
Savita, Shubham, Somnath, Venkat, Raju, Nidhi,
Yeah, clear.
Sagar.
Clear, Nishant.
Okay, let's give me a minute. Okay. Now let's talk about another factor which we call as rate of growth. Okay. So to understand rate of growth, let's take an example first. Let me open the chart. Let's understand it out there. No. Rate of growth, to understand rate of growth, suppose we have an algorithm, sorting algorithm. Sorting algorithm is an algorithm which sort the data in the increasing order. So suppose in this sorting algorithm, I give input of size 10, which give me the result in 10 units of time. Scenario is like that. I have taken a sorting algorithm. I have given an input size of 10 into the sorting algorithm, and it gives me the result in, or it gives me the output in 10 units of time. The question is, if I increase the input size by 100, then how many units of time will it take to give me the output? I've okay. If I raise the input size from 10 to 100, how many unit of time will it take to give me the answer? Is this scenario clear? So let me rephrase it. You have a sorting algorithm which take 10 input size, 10 elements, and give you the output in 10 units of time. Now you increase the elements from 10 to 100. Now how many units of time it going to give you the answer?
100 units of time.
100 units.
100 units.
It will depend on the algorithm.
Yes, sir,
Might
since it is a
still-
starting algorithm, so it will take the same time.
Might still keep on taking only 10 units of time. And it might be-
If the element inputted is already in the sorted manner, then it will be a reduced order of 1.
Okay, let's not talk about the behavior of the input now.
Based on the logic,
The
means,
thing is, you cannot say that if it is taking 10 units of time, it is going to take 100 units of time, even if it is the same algorithm. The rate by which your running time increases cannot be. So when you say 100 input takes 100 unit of time, you are saying this algorithm is linear in nature. Okay, you can't define that. Okay, this cannot be defined. We can calculate this, but this cannot be defined. So generally, this is what the rate of growth is defined as: the rate at which the running time increases by the increase in the input size. Okay, so this is what we call as rate of growth. The rate of growth is nothing but the rate at which the running time increases by increasing. So you can't say that if it is taking 10 unit of time for 10 elements, it is going to take 100 unit of time for the 100 elements. You can't say that. Okay, this is generally we call as rate of growth. Guys, please understand the rate of growth because it become more confusing as we move forward. So simply, the rate at which your running time increases your input by increasing the input size, that you called as a rate of growth. Now, they are already defined rate of growth with us mathematically, like this. So we have constant, we call constant as 1. We have linear as n. We have quadratic as n square. We have cubic as n cube. We have logarithmic as log n. We have linear logarithmic as n log n. We have exponential as x to the power y. These are the generally defined rate of growth. If you observe one thing, everything is defined in n only, where the n is the input size. Now, what happens with the rate of growth in the data structures algorithm is we always try to focus on the bigger picture or bigger problem. So the rate of growth can be defined as a function. Rate of growth can be defined as a function. How to calculate that function, we will see it later, or put it in a function, we will see it later. But hypothetically, suppose it is defined like this: n square. For some algorithm, hypothetically saying it is defined like this: n square plus n plus 100. Okay. Then what happens is, since we want to focus on the bigger problem, I will be focusing on the bigger power of the in the function. So I will approximate it to n square only. Okay, because n is going to be very, very huge, and with the bigger value of the n square, or the bigger power of the bigger power in the function is going to be affected most. Okay, so that's why we will be focusing more on the higher power. All these smaller power, all the constant value, we will be assuming, we will be neglect them. Even if you write like this 100n, that is approximate to 100 only. If you write like 1000, 10 million, it will be approximate to 1 only. Okay, so this is how we approximate the rate of growth. We always be focusing on the higher power of the, because that is where the algorithm is going to behave in the worst. Okay, there where it is going to be behaving bad. Okay, so that's why we want to approximate it to some generic rate of growth which we have defined here, like linear, quadratic, cubic, linear, logarithmic, like that. Okay, and whatever this thing you have constant, whatever you can write it on the paper, it is always be assumed as one only. Okay. Any doubt here?
So Nishant, if we have n cube in the expression you have given, we will be equating it to n cube, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Nishant, what about the factorial?
A factorial you can have, but generally we won't see any algorithm in the factorial form, rate of growth. It could have.
Okay.
Okay. Next thing is analysis of algorithm. Oh, sorry. Next thing is type of analysis of algorithm. Okay. Now, type of algorithm analysis or type of analysis. Now, type of analysis. Now, one thing is again taking the same example of what I say sorting algorithm. Let's say we have a sorting algorithm. We are giving an input of size 10 and we are getting the output in 10 units of time. Question is, do you think that it always going to give the output in 10 units of time for every set of 10 elements? Do we get output in 10 units of time for all the sets of input of size 10? Means this is set 1 of size 10, this is set 2 of size 10, this is set 3 of size. Do you think every time you will get the output in 10 units of time? Do you think that?
So it depends on the algorithm.
It's a sorting algorithm. It will sort the elements in the increasing order.
It will, for every size of 10, it will give the same.
Lakshya, Nidhi, Sagar, Savita, Shubham, what do you guys think?
It depends on the arrangement of the input. If it is already sorted,
okay.
If it is already sorted, we may have a less unit of time.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone? Okay. So that's correct actually. We cannot say that it always going to take 10 units of time for every set of the input size as 10. It depends on the characteristic of the input. Okay. See, this is a sorting algorithm. So what if the elements are already sorted? There may be possibility that the elements are already sorted. Okay. There might be a possibility that they are sorted in decreasing order, or they are randomly put it. Okay. So already sorted means they are favorable to the algorithm. So the algorithm has to perform less work on that. Okay, already sorted. Sorted in reverse order is the most unfavorable condition because there they have to work a very high, means they have to work more to put them in the sorted order in the increasing order. Third one is randomly put, it means they are randomly the random input they have. Okay, so based on this, these are called the characteristics of the input. What they are called as characteristic of input. So based on the characteristics of the input, the algorithm behave different. So that and hence the output, the time in which you get the output will be different. And based on this, there are three things we call as: one is the best case, second is the average case, and third is the worst case. Okay. Now the best case is for the favorable input. Worst case is for the random input. And the worst case is for the unfavorable input. Okay. So these are the three cases. These are the three types of the analysis we define based on the characteristics of the input. So the favorable input, the algorithm has to work less. Average, they have to work on an average case. And that favorable is the most worst case, where it is just opposite condition for the or opposite type of the input for the algorithm. Yes, Nidhi?
So favorable input always means sorted or something else.
Or it
Only
depends
sorted.
from algorithm to algorithm. So since we are talking about the sorting algorithm, it is always sorted. If it is different algorithm, the favorable, unfavorable type of input will be different. It is clear now, Nidhi?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What about other people? Shubham, Sagar, Satya? Okay.
Yes.
Now, yeah. Now, one thing to understand is every case have their own rate of growth. They have their different rate of growth. Okay, because rate of growth depends on the input size. The increase in the running time when you increase the input. So suppose you are favorable input of size 10 giving you some output, favorable input of size 100 giving you something. So the rate of growth for best case, average case and worst case are different. So they are defined by their own equations and then they are approximate in that case. So that's the difference between the rate of growth and the type of the analysis or this cases. Every case will have their own rate of growth. Rate of growth, that's why defined only based on the rate at which the running time increases when your input size increases. Cool.
Nishant, the last statement that rate of growth depends on algorithm.
Rate of growth
What?
depends on the input. See, how we define the rate of growth? The rate at which the running time increases when you increase the input size. So that's why the rate of growth is different for all these three cases. These three cases depends on the characteristic of the input. Now the best case is the favorable input. If you talk about this sorting algorithm, you inserted or you given the already sorted as a favorable input of size 10 that you can increase to 100,000 already sorted one. So that is a different rate of growth. For the unfavorable, there will be a different rate of growth. For random input, there will be a different rate of growth. So these things are different for different inputs. Okay. Okay. Are we clear so far?
Nishant, this rate of growth is always linear in nature.
Rate of growth is always
Linear in nature means only in a linear manner, means like it says that by increasing the input side is always be increasing in time. Means it's a kind of linear relationship
Increasing
between
time could
input
be
time.
anything, no? Increasing time could be anything. When you say linear, if your input is increasing here and if your running time is increasing, this is running time. If you draw the graph like this is linear.
Yeah.
Okay. This is logarithmic, I guess. Okay. So
Yes.
it's not always going to be linear. It could be quadratic, cubic, linear, exponential, anything it could be.
Okay.
It's not linear. That's why here if you say it's quadratic, it's linear,
Yes.
it's constant. Okay.
Mhm.
Are we good so far? Okay. Now what happens is you have the algorithm. You have the algorithm with you. Okay. You have your algorithm with you. You have the parameters also, running time and the space complexity. Now what next? Once you have the algorithm with you, generally what happens in the real world scenario is for a given problem, you define an algorithm. For an algorithm, you define the running time complexity and the space complexity based on the input size. Now you give this requirement to to the person is going to responsible for accumulating the resources. Which type of the processor is need to be used, how much memory it need to be consumed, and all this part. Okay. The other person you have to give the requirement to. Now, what happens is, as a human being, we always believe in keeping the margins. So suppose your algorithm is taking 100 unit of time. Whenever you're deciding on the resource for that algorithm, do you always want to keep like 100? No, because everything which we are calculating here is theoretical. Okay. So as a human, I will have a tendency to keep the margin that okay, for the 100 I can keep a margin. I will assume that I can have 110 as the upper margin. Okay. And then I will decide on the resources which I have to put. When I say resources, it could be the machine, the data in the machine, the RAM in the machine, all this, the processing power of the machine. So for 110, I am going to accumulate the resources. Okay. So as a person who defined an algorithm and calculated the parameters, I should tell the other person that what margins they have to keep. All these margins are, we don't have to calculate the margins by ourselves because we don't know how much resources we have available on the other end. So what we will do is we will calculate, we will just give the notations, we will use the notations to give the margins. Okay, these notations are called as asymptotic notations, and this notation, there are three notations which are in use. One is called as Big O notation, which gives the upper margin or upper boundary. Second is your omega, and third one is your theta. Okay. Theta notation is like for average is for the average boundary. For average, I will explain what that means is the lower boundary. Now what does that means actually is, let's see with the help of a graph. Suppose I'm talking about the Big O notation. So what happens in the Big O notation is, suppose if your function is growing like this, it is growing like this, you will say that there exists another function, there exists another function g of n, you for which for any value of n, higher value of n, your n, for any higher value of n, your f of n is never going to cross g of n. So G of n is like this. Big O of f of n. Okay. So G of n is big O of f of n. So it means that it defines that for any higher value of f of n, it never going to cross your G of n. For some smaller values, it might cross, but any higher value, it is never ever going to cross. Okay. In practical terms, it means that if I have put it 100 and I have told that, okay, my algorithm is running 100 unit of time and I have put it inside the big O, then it's the responsibility of the other person to keep some upper margin, to say that, okay, let's keep it 150. Means this algorithm is not ever, never ever going to cross 150 units of time. Okay, so that's what the big O notation means. Big O notation keeps the upper margin. Similarly, we have omega notation. Okay, so the omega notation is like this. Omega notation is like this. Omega notation is responsible for the lower bound. As a human being, we also wants to know that how better our algorithm can perform. Okay, how better our algorithm can perform. So it defines the another functions g of n and says that whatever happens, your function f of n is never ever going to be better than g of n. So g of n is like omega of f of n. In practical terms, if you have this omega of something, let's say your algorithm is performing better like 20. So it means that I have to be prepare for the lower margin of 10. Okay, like this. This is what your omega is. Now what happens is there is very rare case for any algorithm to touch or go till the upper boundary or to go to the lower boundary. Most of the time they have a very rare very average spectrum, or they have the spectrum for the average inputs or the random inputs. Okay, so that is bounded by the theta. We use the theta to bound that. Theta notation. So theta notation will be like this. Your function is this, and your g of n will be like this. It means that your average, on an average, whatever your average random inputs, your function will always bound by g1 and g1 and g2, or c1 g1 and c1 g2. Okay, so it will be more clear like this. Suppose we have an algorithm which can which can perform like this, have 10. On an average spectrum, it will be like between 50 and 70. In the worst or outmost, it goes till the 100. Okay. Now, theta notation puts, okay, omega notation puts a lower boundary that, okay, it will not go to, less than 5. Theta says that on an average, okay, I made a mistake here. So suppose, yeah, on an average, algorithm is performing around 50, and in the worst case, it is going till 100. So the lower margin is like 5. Okay, this is defined by omega. Theta tell that if it is 50, it might fluctuate between 40 and 60, and this is theta. And your big O notation says that it will not go beyond 110 or 140, whatever it is, how much resources they have. Okay, so that's how they bound everything. Okay, that's how they bound everything. So always the asymptotic notations are applied on rate of growth. Okay, and you have seen that the rate of growth is different for base case, average case, and the worst case. It means that base case can have big O notation, omega notation, and theta notation. Average case can have big O notation, omega notation, and theta notation. the worst case can have the big O notation, omega notation, and the theta notation. Okay, so that's how, because the asymptotic notation is always applied to the rate of growth only. It is, and rate of growth is connected with your running time. That's why you have seen the running time in big O notation something, but the space complexity is always not given in any asymptotic notation. Okay. The another part which you want to say was, okay. Any doubts so far here in the notations?
In the average notation, we get a range.
In a theta notation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Because on an average, when you give the random inputs, it will fluctuate between this most of the time. So suppose you run your algorithm 100 times. So 90% of the time it will be fluctuating here. 6% of the time it might still go here, and 4% time it might go.
And for upper and lower bound means omega, for omega and big O, it is specific a number.
It is a specific number. Okay, so as a human being, what we want to do, we always prepare for the worst case, and that too, we want to prepare for the worst case, and that too for the upper bound. So that's why you have seen all the complexities for the, we go for the worst case and big O notation. Okay, because we always believe in preparing for the worst. That's why everybody is going to ask about the worst case big O notation. Worst case in big O notation. Cool. Are we good so far?
I have a doubt. So you told that we, for each notation we'll have the best, worst, and average case. So you mean that if, let's say, for a solution we have a upper bound, and for that upper bound also we will have best case, worst case, and average case?
No, it is opposite. For any solution, for any algorithm, you can have best case, average case, and worst case. For every case, you can have big O, omega, and theta notation.
Yes. So for every case we'll have three cases, right? So is it based on the size of the input? Because let's say that we have a best case.
Notations are, these are just the notations. Okay, this will tell you the margins. But the rate of growth, when we see the cases, every case will have its own rate of growth, and rate of growth is bounded by your this thing, input size. Okay. Is it clear now, Kavita?
Yeah, so what I about to ask was, let's say that in a sorting algorithm we have a best favorable input, that is a sorted array. So in that case we'll have worst, average, and the best case.
So if you have the favorable, that's what I've written. If you have the favorable input, that is already a best case.
Okay.
Among the best case, you can have 3 different notations, because base case is having
okay. So in the best case we'll have 3 different notations, right? So is it dependent on the size of the input?
See, that's what I'm saying. These notations are not depending on the size; they are just margins to your rate of growth parameter. These are just the margins to your rate of growth parameter.
Okay.
Any other doubt?
Margins to the rate of growth parameter. Rate of growth parameter indicates increment in the input size. So can you elaborate this little more?
Okay. So rate of growth is your increment in the rate of increment in the input size. So suppose you have given the elements like 1, 2, 3, 4 to the sorting algorithm. It will give, okay, this is the favorable input. You will get 1, 2, 3, 4. You can increase this input to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You will get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So how they are incrementing? So this is, you will get the output. Let's say you get this in the 10 units of time. You will get in the 100 unit of time. Okay. So this 10 to this 100 is increment is called as rate of growth. So rate of growth is associated. So this is the best case I'm talking about. So every case will have its rate of growth. Okay. So the rate by which your running time increases when you increase your input size. Okay. It's not necessary that it will be increasing linearly. It could be increasing quadrately. Okay. It's not necessary that it is always increasing in the linear fashion. It could be anything. Cool. So that is what the rate of growth is and how it is associated with every characteristic.
Okay, so can I? So let's consider that, as you have said, we are getting sorted array. I'm just going with the best case first. Best case, I have sorted array, and now I want to understand its big O notation. So big O notation, this part I am not able to connect because I could understand that best cases is what and how the rate of growth will be associated.
How you can connect
Yeah,
it? Best case will have its own rate of growth,
yeah.
and asymptotic notations are applied always on rate of growth. So, for example,
Okay.
the best case is taking 10 units of time. Okay. Best case is taking 10 units of time. If you apply the big O notation around 10, it could be 150. Oh, sorry, it could be 20. If you apply the omega around 10, it could be 2. If you apply the theta around 10, it could be between 5 and 6, like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Guys, you don't have to worry very much around it. Okay, it will be more clear when we practically solve the complexities. Okay, and this is the theory version which you should know, but it is not so much of the importance for the interview purposes. Okay. Still, you can ask me anything around it.
Yeah, actually, Nishant, I have read it in many books, but I never like this is the first time I was able to understand that how asymptotic notations are so much important in cases like best, average, and so how do we connect them? That is something which is really a meaningful information.
Cool. Is it clear to all? Venkat, Somna, Shivam, Savita, Satya, Ritika, Nidhi.
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a break for 10 minutes. Then we will continue with some practice questions. Okay, you guys can also take a break. We will come back at 2:20. Okay, today the class might stretch for 15 to 20 minutes. Cool. Okay, thank you guys. I'm in the meeting only. Okay, I'm on mute. I'm grab some water and come back. Okay, guys, let's start. Okay, so this is about the concepts, what we talked. Now let's talk about some practice, how we practically try to evaluate the complexity in the code. Okay. Now, how I define the complexity is, right now I will be talking about the running time only. How I define a complexity is the total number of times or total processing is done. Total processing of total element processing of or the number of elements for which processing is done. Let me say like this. Total processing is element is done. Okay. This is what I am defining as the complexity. Yes, Ankit? Okay. So for example, let's take an example. Suppose I have a simple loop. Never ever just looking at the loop tell about what will be the processing. Okay. You have to figure out how your loop, how many elements you are working with and how it is going. Okay. So that's what you have to look for. Okay. So if you look in this loop, what we are doing, processing this is always constant. This is always constant, means this statement is going to take a constant name, or you can say this is the processing. Okay. Now you can see that how your element, how many elements or how elements are getting processes. You start with I equals to 0, then you move to 1, then you move to 2, 3, 4 till n. So how many elements you are processing? Total n elements are there and total processing is n processing. N elements are processed n time. Okay. So that's why the complexity will be order of n only. Is this part clear?
Nishan?
Huh?
Yeah. So we traversed n elements, means the traversing is of n elements, and we are processing one element at a time.
Yes.
So that's why the big O notation of this, or you can say the complexity of this is we are taking as order of n. That is okay, because we measure the complexities always in the worst case scenario.
Yeah. So right now we are not talking about any case. We are just in some piece of code we are trying to figure out. Okay. So that's the thing. Okay. That's what we are trying to do.
So over here, O means order of n, or it's a big O notation.
Big O notation. See, order of and big O are the same thing. People say big O of n or order of n. They are the same thing. The proper name nomenclature is order of big of n actually.
Okay.
Okay. Now guys, we are going to practice few of the things. I want everybody to DM me the answer rather than speaking it out. Okay, because I don't want to interrupt or disrupt the thinking of other person. Okay. So this is the piece of code. You have to tell me what will be the complexity for this. Okay. How much total processing you are doing for n elements. The input size is n. The number of total process, how many elements are getting processed, or total processing you are doing, that you have to, that will be the complexity. Okay. That you can DM me. Okay. Take your time. We are not in a hurry. Okay. We will check. Okay, the complexity is order of n square. Why is it order of n square? Because if you look closely, for every element outside, like I equals to 0, 1, 2, 3, till n, what you are doing? Till n minus 1, what you are doing? You are again trying to get the element till n minus 1. Like here also 0, 1, 2, till n minus 1. So that's why the complexity here is n into n. That will be order of n square. Okay. Okay. So this is the part. Then next is just a minute. Here is the order of n. Okay, let's see. Okay. Cool. Most of you have got the correct answer. Thing is, it is order of n only. Why it is order of n? Because for every element outside, for example, I equals to 0, 1, 2 till n minus 1, we are trying to get inside, but there is a break statement. Statement will always take it out from the inner loop. So it will just accessing one element inside it. Okay. So that's why it is 1 into n. So that will be order of n only, or big of n. So the time complexity for this is big of n. Is it clear why it is big of n? Anyone is having any doubt here? So everybody done? Ritika, Shubham, Savita, Satya, Manu, Lakshya. Anyone is there who's facing any difficulty here? So guys, one thing, you don't have to do the calculation for the constant. For example, here if you look, first loop will go through n elements, so C1 into n plus C2 into n. So how you can solve? You can take Cn out, so it will be C1 plus C2. Okay, that means it is approximately equals to big of n only. Okay, this is what the complexity of this. Next is this.
Nishant, one more question here. So it's like a first loop which is O of n, and then we go to the next loop which is again O of n. So can we say that like 2 O of n equates to 1 O of n approx?
You can. Other way to solve is like you will be seeing that C1 of n plus O of C2 of n, that will be O of n plus O of n, that is approximate to O of n.
Okay, but practically, if two loops sequentially but not Cartesian wise exist in a code, um, so does this indicates that both the loops execution not the execution CPU running time is O of n, like considering both for n input.
Yeah, that's why we are trying to approximate everything here, now, because if you look the algorithms, we are approximating the things here. Okay, if you look practically, things will different. If you look practically, one loop will be executing n times only, and another program which is using two loops like that will take a bit more time. But here we want to approximate it in such a way that the algorithm will be more generic in nature. Okay, I will be back in a minute. Yeah, Ritika. Yeah, is it clear now?
Yeah, it is. like theoretically it is clear, but I think practically it varies when we, let's say if I have 5 loops continuously in sequence, not a nested ones.
Ritika,
Yeah.
listen to me. Practically, what you are saying is correct, but in data structures and algorithms, we always try to make the parameters so generic in nature that the practicability undermines. Okay, so if you have a program which is using a single loop, it is also order of n. If you have a program which is using 5 loop, it is also order of n. Okay, so theoretically both are having the complexity same. But when you are going to execute both the programs on a very higher input, there will be some substantial difference in the execution time. Okay, so practicality is being undermined because we are not going into the specificity of the algorithm. Hope I answered
Yeah,
you.
true.
Oh.
Uh, Nishant, one question with respect to interview perspective. Should we hesitate to use nested loops while, I mean, in case in interviews?
It is not about hesitation. See, it's all about the complexity. If you are achieving the better complexity in any of the implementation, it doesn't matter whether you use a nested loop or not. It doesn't matter. Now let's see if
Okay.
we can calculate this complexity. Okay. So the first one is straightforward C into n. The second one is C2 into n by 2. Okay, why? Because your J is going from n by 2 to n minus 1. So there are approximately n by 2 elements in it. First loop is going from 0 to n minus 1. So they are n elements. Second loop is going to n by 2 to n minus 1. They are approximately n by 2 elements. Okay. So when we try to solve this, it will be C1 into n plus C2 into n by 2. So you can take n out. That will be C1 plus C2 by 2. So this is a constant. So we approximate the constant. So this will be equals to order of n. Okay. Savita, is it clear? There will be no log in this.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. And Amar, is it clear?
Yeah.
What you have written and what I have calculated?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now let's get the another one. Okay. Try to calculate for this one. Okay. Let's see. What we have in the first loop, we are going through C1 into n. Second loop, we are going through n by 2 into n into C2. Okay. So that will be C1n and C2n square by 2. Okay. So if we approximate it, it will be order of n square because here C is constant, here C2 by 2 is constant. And among n and n square is the higher power. That's why. Clear? Now let's make the thing complex now. Is it clear to everyone? Anyone who's having doubt here? Oh, let's try to solve the seventh one. Look closely to this because this is a bit different.
I is equal to in the loop I is equal to I into 2 it is, or to the power I. It's just to confirm.
I into 2 actually. Now, let's see how we can calculate this. Okay, let's take a few more minutes. So what will be the first element which we process? Is the 1. Second is 1 into 2, 2. Third is 2 into 2 is 4. 4 into 2, 8. 8 into 2, 16, and like that, 32. So you can see that we are not processing every element here. We are processing the first element, then second element, fourth element, eighth element, 16, and 32. Okay, this how we are accessing. And this is nothing but 2 to the power 0, 2 to the power 1, 2 to the power 2, and till 2 to the power some k. This is nothing but a series of log n. Okay. Now, sometimes what happens is we won't able to identify which series it is. Okay. How, in that case, how we can do that? In that case, we will work on this condition, I is less than n. So suppose for some 2 to the power k, I greater than this loop will terminate. Then what I will try to do here is, I will try to get the value of k. So what I will do, I will apply log on both sides. Okay. What happens? A to the power b becomes b log a. And this is nothing but 1. So you will get k as log n. So this becomes your complexity. Okay. This is the case. This is helpful when you are not able to identify which series it is. So you don't have to remember the series here. Okay. So it is very important to understand that even the loop is written like this. Okay. It is written in a loop. It is not always going to be order of n. Sometimes people say that there is one loop that's why the complexity is order of n. No, that is not correct. You have to check how the elements are accessed and how many elements are processed. So here is the good example where the elements are not the processing is not equals to n. Okay. Is it clear so far?
So, Nishant, is it always a log 2 that we have to take?
Sorry.
You have taken log on both sides, right?
Ah.
So, is it always log to the base 2?
Because there is a property, log a base a will always equals to 1. That's why I have taken like that.
Okay.
Other property is log base 2 a to the power b is b log a.
Hello, Nishant, am I audible?
Yeah, okay. Tell me.
Yeah. Sorry. So let's say if in the above example, it comes out to be I into 3 or maybe I into 5, then the order notation would be log to the base 5n.
Yes. Yes.
Nishan, what is this I into root 2?
Sorry. Sorry, come again.
2.
Hello. Ankit, I lost you. Where am I audible? Aman.
Yes.
Hello, am I audible?
Get your audible now.
Sorry, actually, I was asking that if somebody says that the complexity is of the order of or order of log n, then will they mention the base as well, or
By default, it is 2. If
by
it is
default?
not 2, then they mention it. Okay, try to solve for this. This is the last one for the today. Okay, this one I will help you out with. So if you understand, if you look correctly, you are going like this only. 1, 1, 2, 3, but where it should end, you don't know. So suppose some k square, it will end. You don't know how many elements in between you have processed. So again, we apply the same logic. I will applying the square roots on both the sides. So that will be k root n. So the complexity is square root of n. A. Raju, Shubham, Amar, is it clear? Why the complexity?
Yes.
Yes.
You have
Why the square root has been applied?
because k square. I want to take the value of k. So square root means 1 by 2 into 2. So that's how you will get the value of k. Here, you know that the I is accessing in 1, 2, 3rd, 4th, 5th element, but where it is getting n, it is not getting at n because of this. So that's why we have used the above logic or the thinking process to get this done.
So square root of n means n log n. Am I correct?
Sorry.
Square root of n is n log n.
Square root of n is n log
N
n.
log.
No. You are saying square root of n is n log n. Like you are saying this are same.
Yeah. If we apply log to that square root.
But why? We already take out the value of k now. I already had the value of k. I don't need to apply.
So Nishant, so by comparing the below question and this one, so what I find is we will substitute a method that will cancel whatever we have in the left side, so that only k is left, and whatever we have in the right side is the actual
Yes. So
complexity.
we try to figure out what will be the value of k. That will help us to
Okay.
identify how many elements we have processed.
Okay.
Nishant, how's k square came there? 1, 2, 3,
This is the value of I. You started I with 1,
yeah.
then I becomes 2, I becomes 3. But for some k, I equals to k, it will got terminated. Na? Here I into I is written with that means is k square. For some I equals to k, this got terminated. Na? That's why I have written k square is greater than n. Okay.
Oh, okay. Nishant,
Hmm.
yeah, that means 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma so on. Then it comes under 1 square, 2 square, 3 square, so
Right.
on. It comes under k square, right?
See, this is a checking condition.
Yeah.
This is that which element you are accessing. First element you access, second element you access, third element you access, like that. It
Okay.
is not good to say that 1 square, 2 square, 3 square. It means that you access first element, then fourth element, then ninth element. This is wrong to say.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So guys, I'm stopping up here today. This is in the complexity. Complexity is a topic which is going to be continuously there with us when we're discussing any problem, any algorithm or the solution, and to identify which algorithm and the solution are the better than the others. Okay, and that's what we will do. Cool. So tomorrow I will ask the admin to post the warm-up assignment set that you have to complete it in this week. Next week we are going to start with the arrays. Okay, and we'll see, and we will discuss the topic, and we will start with some problem solving, and we will look into the more complexity part. Okay, will that be fine? Lakshit, Raju, Ritika.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, Nish.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In between, if you have any doubt or anything you want to connect with me, you can ask admin. They will help you out with me. They will help you out with my number, and my number is also there in the WhatsApp group. Good.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, guys.